Will Florida State land Zahir Mathis, or will NIL get in the way?
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into Locked On Seminoles. I am your host, Brian Smith, longtime college football writer and recruiting analyst. Thank you for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day. Today's show is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Florida State has some interesting scenarios going on the back end. They've got some official visits lined up in 2026 for some elite players, Smoke Matthews and some other guys I'm going to talk about. There's some good news in regards to some players they're going to sign on the second national signing day. Not really national anymore, but Florida State has made the most of it, and they're going to finish pretty strong. But first off, to truly hit the home run, the Noles need to land Zahir Mathis. And that's what I'm going to talk about first, and this is my take on the scenario. It's probably not going to end well for Florida State. If you're looking for super positive, this ain't going to be it. Florida State's NIL may or may not be where it needs to be, but let me define what we're talking about here. Out of Emotep Charter in Philadelphia, Zahir Mathis is one of the top defensive ends in the 2025 class. He could have ended up at several schools, but after decommitting from Ohio State, didn't go to Penn State, didn't work out with Michigan or UCLA, he did visit Florida State, but he took a late visit to Maryland. Now, Philadelphia and D.C., where University of Maryland's basically at, it's just outside in College Park. They're not that far apart, and their NIL is elite. It is not good. It is elite. Now, what am I talking about? Well, I can't give a direct number. I do know on a player in the class of 26 that's already committed there that the number is ridiculous. If you're going to be offering that kind of cash, even a team that was 4-8 last year, and quite honestly, a perennial bottom feeder in the ACC and now Big Ten over the last 30 years, it's hard to beat them. I don't think, from what I've been told about Florida State's NIL, that it's bad, and it's certainly improved based on some of the players they got in the portal and some of the guys they've already landed in January at the high school level. Maybe there's a combination of this is how much of our funds we had allocated already. We're not willing to go that level. Maybe Zahir Mathis just wants to go to Maryland anyway, and I'm just way off. But from everything I've heard and all the things that are going on at Maryland, I would bet my bottom dollar that Florida State is going to lose this battle because of NIL. I'd mentioned this last week, and 24/7 Noles said today that they'd heard Mathis is going to pick Maryland. I'm not surprised by that because I knew if they really wanted to open the checkbook, they could. Here's a little point. This isn't an opinion. It's just fact. One of the biggest boosters for Maryland is none other than a guy that happens to run Under Armour. He is a University of Maryland grad. I get it. If I had that kind of money, I'd want to see the Terps win too. Maybe he's one of the guys. I don't know. But they have plenty of people around D.C. to help that program. The only real question here is, why has Maryland, because it's right outside of D.C., and that city's always had great football talent, why do they suck almost always? It's amazing. They've thrown money into the wind forever and just never seen it come back. It's just floating away. Well, with that being stated, if Florida State loses Zahir Mathis, it's not great news, and I get that. It would be nice to land another edge guy that could be your stand-up jack position or whatever Florida State ends up calling it. I don't care. He can play. I saw him at Under Armour, 6'5", 220 plus, maybe 230. He can really run. This is a kid that's ready to play some football as a freshman somewhere. Just needs to get a little bit more fit for the system that he's in, a few more technical things like any other high school player. But he's going to play some reps next year somewhere. Looks like it's going to be Maryland. If it's not Florida State, just note that there's still some good news. And let's transition to that. Florida State still has a few different guys they're going to sign. Antonio Cromartie Jr. out of Carrollton, obviously the son of Antonio Cromartie, the great Florida State player, San Diego Charger, NFL guy, tremendous football player. I'm not saying his son's the same level. He's a smaller guy, but I thought he was overlooked. And I think it's a good idea for Florida State to keep in business with legacies and honestly, at worst, he's going to be better than some of the walk-ons or some of the other guys at the bottom of the roster. Watching his film, I am 100% steadfast in that. He is undervalued. That being the case, you got to figure out a spot for him in the secondary. Is it going to be nickel? Maybe it's a safety spot. Maybe he plays multiple. I don't know. Tony White's new defense will find a home for him. Remember, they have a really different look on how they do defense. You'll get to see more of it once we get into spring ball, but they use essentially 3 safeties across the top. Sometimes they drop down. It is a multiple defense. There's a lot of ways to look at it, and they can have a different view than I would or anybody else for Cromartie. We'll see what happens. Chasten Brown, this I do know, no doubt about it. Getting 6'6", 6'7" offensive tackles with athleticism is something Florida State has stunk at for a long time. Thank goodness I get to talk about a guy with tremendous upside. They had a few of these guys with good upside, but we need to see more. Lucas Simmons, still waiting to see what happens with him. He's getting ready to come into a critical year. But when you need a guy like Chasten Brown in every class at a Northside, Warner Robins, Georgia, this kid was a little bit undervalued in my opinion. And I think UCF have done a good job. They had recruited him when Gus was there. With Herb, why not? You already know the kid. He already knows you. It's even closer to Florida State than it is UCF. And Wardley knows the Noles need offensive tackle help. He will be signing tomorrow as well. And then finally, Chavez Thompson, the offensive lineman / defensive lineman. I thought he was a better defense player personally. 6 foot, 6'1". This is a kid that played at Cocoa. He knows what it's like to be a big-time player. I saw him as a sophomore, and I knew he was going to be really good. The only question with him is, would they ever think about playing him in defense in any way, shape, or form? I'm not sure exactly how they're going to operate the D. If they're going to run some 4-man line or consistently, he could play in it. But if they're going to use a ton of 3-man, he's a shorter guy. He's probably not the fit. So it looks like he's going to play center, and that's where he's projected. But I think he's just as good, if not a better, defensive player in general. So Florida State is going to close the 2025 class pretty strong, but there's still some questions about what's going to happen as they transition. And I want to touch upon a little bit more with NIL and how it kind of brokers together as it relates to the transfer portal. That is next here on Locked on Seminoles. Looking for tickets to get your next big event taken care of, whether it's a concert, comedy show, maybe it's you're going to a baseball game with your buddies, you're taking your wife to the movies, whatever it is, getting the right ticket at the right price can be a headache. But with Gametime, it's never been easier. Well, let me tell you how it works. With Gametime Picks, the app will let you do all the hard work for you. It curates the best deals, so you don't have to look around and waste time searching. Gametime Picks is something I've been using for a while now, and here's why I love it. Curated deals. In other words, they've already got special packages. Once you click on it, inside a team, like you roll up Florida State, Orlando Magic, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, whether it's a concert, whether it's a theater, special deals right there for you. Also with Gametime Picks, you're always going to be able to do the same thing that I love that I've talked about several times. You can see your future seat from your phone. You click on it, it will show you the view. Seat view is important. How far am I for this price? I mean, how many times have you asked yourself that when buying a ticket online? You can find it with Gametime. Ready to make the next event better? Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Florida State has to find a way to blend NIL with high school and the portal. It is hard. Every college football program is in the same boat. Every NIL collective, house settlement, etc. There are moving parts. And yes, there's some guessing going on. There's no way around it. Well, everybody likes to point fingers, myself included. Over the next year, there's going to be snafus for every college football program, and I guarantee it. Again, there are moving parts, and that's not conjecture. There's still no house settlement guaranteed to be done. I believe it's March, off the top of my head, that they're going to go and vote on some more things with the house settlement that would go into effect as it stands now on the 1st of July on like $22 million, give or take, for these athletic departments to use. And how much of it goes towards football and baseball and basketball, women's sports, wrestling, all that. Every school is going to have some different play, But how much? Will there be changes to that? We literally don't know. So the money that the collectives and the schools have right now, whether they're going after a Zahir Mathis, deciding to hold back on some money, or splitting it up for the portal, they're thinking we need another guy right away that's got experience from the spring window. Yes, there is a spring transfer portal window that Florida State and Texas and Clemson and Miami and everybody has to at least entertain. It's confusing. So while I was unfortunately giving the news about Zahir Mathis a little bit ago from what has been reported, note there's reasons for things going on. Even if I'm right, and Maryland is just throwing out an offer that Mathis cannot refuse, that does not mean Florida State is not going to use its money in a wise way. Sometimes saving for a rainy day is important. Let me give you an example. The advantage of still having a spring portal window more than any other is for an unfortunate reason, but it is an insurance plan: injury. Spring practice is going to have at least one guy go down that it's an uh-oh moment. Not just for the young man, but for the program itself. Florida State, whether it's an offensive lineman, a linebacker, a running back, whatever, somebody's going to get hurt. ACL is almost assured in at least one of, if not both, spring practice and fall camp. It's just the way it is. It seems like it happens just about every program. One or the other is going to have an ACL or something. If it happens, you'd rather be in the spring so the young man could get back maybe for the bowl game, depending on how things went. If not, he would still be ready for the next spring, etc. With that being stated, Florida State could save some of this money if they don't use it on Mathis and apply it to the portal, at least hypothetically. Keep that in mind. The transfer portal in high school, there's always so much money, and you're going to allocate it different places. To that end, I was speaking with Stephen Willis of Locked On Ole Miss earlier today. Ole Miss literally has a person that is like the GM in regards to the money by position. He will tell the position coaches, at your spot, you have X. You spend it how you want, but this is how much you get. I don't know if that's what Florida State is doing, but at some point, you're going to hit a cap. It's a lot like the National Football League in that regard. College football is changing, whether you like it or not, and that's something that we all have to kind of think about. As for closing out the 25 class, is there anybody else that could jump in? Not to my knowledge. I know I'm probably going to get people ask about that. I'll touch on Florida State tomorrow night after everything's done, after Norvell speaks, etc. I'm hoping to hear what he has to say about some of the transfers, but that's all a big part of what's going on in college football. The transfer is now the second, quote unquote, again, it's not really, but they call it National Signing Day. The first one is the real National Signing Day in early December. I expect Norvell to comment about Thomas Castellanos and about all these different guys that they did spend money on. And in essence, again, that is part of the reason, in my opinion, why they're not going to necessarily land Zahir Mathis, and from what it sounds like from multiple places, 24/7 Noles included, he's going to go to Maryland. But that's okay. You got to take care of your base. Think about what Florida State got here. 4 line with starting experience, each one of them. Quarterback that fits Malzahn's offense and actually played for Gus at UCF for a year. 3-year player, going to be a senior at Florida State. That's a good deal for Florida State. They got Deuce Robinson. Did they spend their NIL well? Yeah, they did. I don't think Florida State made errors there, and I'm okay with it. You're not going to win every battle anyway, but still, Florida State put themselves in a way better position than I thought they were going to be in, even by the end of by mid-January. Say what you want, but I call that kudos. If you find a way to get the kids on campus, approach it from a likable standpoint of who's offering the opportunity to be under them as a coach. If you've got good people there, Gus is a good guy, by the way. Herb's a good guy. Tim Harris Jr. is a good guy. They've gotten some good coaches to come in. They can recruit. I think they'll do well. Again, watch out for the spring window. Just a gut feeling on my part. The Noles are going to get another key player for the 25 season. Not going to win with Mathis, but they're going to win with somebody else. To that point, when we close out this show, 2026, Florida State, they've got some good visits coming up. And I want to talk about one before we get to the rest, because this is a really good player, and it just shows you another part of the NIL budget and how this works. Smoke Matthews, really good corner. Saw him last year. as a rising junior at OT7 in Florida. Holy cow, was this kid put together. 190 some pounds, 6'1", really instinctive. Most quarterbacks, quite honestly, stayed away from him. He got beat a few times, don't get me wrong. They're elite receivers at OT7. But he looked like he was in college already. Evan Cooper, Surtain, Coach White, the whole staff. Getting a kid like Smoke on campus is important. We're going to talk a little bit more about some of the other kids, but again, I know that Matthews is not a guy that you can take mildly and just say, oh, okay, well, he's a passing, he's just going to come through. Smoke can go visit wherever he wants. He had like 40 offers before his junior year. And the kind of personality he is, the kind of guy that he is, he's out of Howe High School in Cornelius, North Carolina. That kind of surprised me because Florida State's not going to have the easiest room to come in and play right away. They already got an OB with him. He's got Florida State on June 6th. He's got South Carolina on June 20th. That's a really good sign. I have to believe that some of the offers that he has, like South Carolina's got humongous NIL. Some of the NIL offers that he has, for Florida State to be in the boat for him already is a really good sign. When we come back, we're going to talk more about some of the kids they have already lined up right here on Locked on Seminoles. Florida State's 2026 class is off to a good start. I talked about Smoke Matthews. He's already got an official visit lined up with South Carolina. He's already got one lined up with Florida State, and he's got offers from about 40 programs. That's a pretty good sign for things to go. He'll probably visit Clemson. Maybe it's Oregon or Ohio State or somebody. It will be a very, very difficult get. He's a top 100 recruit. But that being stated, Florida State is far from done. Based on the kids that they have already lined up, it's pretty impressive. And maybe I'm just old school and I'm just shocked to see this the day before National Signing Day. For one class, you got a bunch of kids already lined up. I want to go through a few more. The kid that I know best out of this group is somebody that I've talked about already on this show multiple times. Cam Brooks, defensive lineman at a TCC, Thomas County Central, 30 miles away from the Florida State campus due north. Just across the border, it's like 12 miles into the state of Georgia. Great kid, 6'4", 240-some pounds. He's a power player, but he has some twitch to him as well. Good inside pass rush. A guy that has the ability to chase down plays, offers from pretty much everybody. He's already got a Florida State visit lined up. Now, this is where it gets kind of interesting to me. I'm not saying that they're going to get everybody, but maybe he's the most important D-line recruit. Again, he's 30 miles away. It's kind of hard to lose that kid and feel like you achieved everything. Top 100 player by 24/7. He's got Miami June 20th. This is kind of random. He's got Cal June 12th. The next time I talk to Cam, I'm curious to get involved on that conversation. Maybe he's got family in Northern California. I don't know. Florida State June 6th and Clemson on May 30th. Really good player. And again, you just can't have enough D linemen. Florida State's done a decent job recruiting D linemen for a while, but they need to get more edge guys out of the high school ranks that are elite. Not projects or upside, but like really, really good. No doubt about it. I've seen Cam play a number of times, practice, seen him in games. He's the real deal, and he's a national recruit for a reason. Also, on this list, it's not a small list. It's a really good one. This would be fun just from the standpoint of if Florida State gets this next young man, they might be upsetting. I know this would break Florida State fans' heart. They might be upsetting Florida in this race. It's hard to say how it's going to go, but right now Florida State's got a visit set for Caden Hall. He's a safety. He's a national top 200 player by some of the services. 247 as in 237. I think that's a little low, but nonetheless, Milton, Florida is just outside Pensacola. He's a kid that was recently at UF. He's got the athleticism and change of direction to look for, and he's got length. He's listed at 6'3", so he's probably 6'2", but he has the absolute goods. Buddy of mine has worked with him before. This is the kind of kid that can change a program. Think about Ezra Thomas. That's a really good football player Florida State just had and teams avoided. This is the kind of guy Caden Hall can be. A little different position. I think he would play safety at Florida State. Might play corner. You never know. But nonetheless, the physical traits are there to be a starter for multiple years at the high Power 4 level. Next up on the list, I love Caden Hall, by the way. Next up on the list, Florida State hasn't exactly dominated, being kind here, at recruiting IMG. And trying to think the last time they were a consistent contender for top 2-3 guys at that program. And it had probably Jimbo was there at the time. But anyway, and that was at the end, and it was kind of going, their program wasn't great at that time, but we'll see. Probably going to mispronounce his name. Deon Forkpaw Jr., IMG Academy, linebacker, 6 foot, 225 pounds. That's a kid that's already lined up a visit to the Florida State Seminoles. Anytime I see IMG, I know the guys that run that program in terms of trying to look at it holistically, bring in the best players. Look, they know what they're looking at. He didn't go there for just any reason. First visit he's got signed up with is Florida State. Florida State needs to do better with linebacker recruiting. If you can get an IMG kid, amen to that. Jaron Hewley, another kid out of Florida, athletic player. Cardinal Newman, a player that Florida State has done well with here recently. So there's familiarity. Athlete, could play DB, could play receiver, running back. Who's one of those kids. I don't know what Florida State's going to try to do with this DB class, but it's the one position, if you think about it, where Florida State has killed it in regards to not really needing the portal to get over the top. Really, that's it. I mean, I don't care if you're talking about the star position, nickel, whatever it is, corner or safety. Florida State, for the most part, has recruited high school kids. You keep getting kids like this, in-state kids that are lengthy, athletic, play at South Florida, you got a pretty good chance to continue on that path. Again, that's his first visit lined up. A couple other guys, maybe the best DB in South Florida or the state or maybe in the nation, depending on who you talk to. I haven't seen him play live yet, so I don't have quite the same opinion, but I do like his high school film. Chauncey Kennon's got a visit set for June 13th with Florida State. He's out of Booker. This is another long corner. This will be a war for his recruitment. His visit list is pretty straightforward on how good it is. Miami, May 31st. Georgia, June 6th. Florida State, June 13th. And wrapping up June visits, LSU on June 21st. Watch out for LSU. DB coach was originally at Florida, or not originally, but he was at Florida a while. He's got connections to Sunshine State. Do not count out the LSU Tigers there. And I know Florida's involved too, among others. But Florida State's got a visit with him on the 13th. I'm curious to see if Cooper or Surtain and everybody can get that one done. That's going to be hard. That'll take NIL and everything else. Chauncey Kennon is really, really good. Now, this last kid is somebody I still don't know a ton about. I will probably see him this next weekend. Under Armour Atlanta's coming, so I'm going to wait to see him live to kind of give my thoughts on it. But this is a big boy. Goodness. Brandon Anderson, 320 pounds, 6'4", North Cobb High School. Really good program. Just north of Atlanta in Kennesaw. He is ranked as the 21st offensive lineman nationally by 24/7. He's the number 287 player overall. Official visit list is also no joke. Tennessee, June 20th. Florida State, June 13th. Florida, June 6th. Georgia, May 30th. I mean, that's about as straightforward as it gets. He's got an offer from Bama and several others too. Doesn't shock me, but again, that just shows you Florida State is now back in the boat for just about everybody. And that's, that just wasn't the case a year ago. Like early on, they just weren't making this kind of headway. Finally, Karan Maycock out of Central High School in Miami, about as famous a high school as there is in the country. Let's be honest. Florida State's had some traditional big-time players come out of the public league in Miami. Maybe this one's the next. He's a kid that is athletic, can really run. The two visits he has said, not surprising, Miami and Florida State, May 30th and June 20th, in that order for the Canes and the Noles. Florida State's doing pretty good getting visits lined up. And to be honest with you, it's fun to talk about it because I'm a recruiting nut and I like talking about positivity when I can. Florida State's up ahead of it on the 26 class, and hats off to everybody. Malzahn and all the guys they added to the staff, of course, Norvell, and everybody in the back office. Don't ever forget about the back office people. They don't get enough credit because at any school, if you have success, especially early in lining up visits, the people in the back office doing the transcripts, setting up dates, transportation, hotel, helping the parents understand the school, all that stuff, it is vital. They're doing a good job, or these visits would not be already lined up. Kudos to all of them. Thank you once again for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day. Truly appreciate you stopping in to talk some Noles with me. I will see you on National Signing Day tomorrow. Going to talk about Florida State a little later in the afternoon after Norvell speaks. We'll kind of go over what did or did not happen and kind of give an overview of the class and anything else. There could be some discussion about, again, I hope Norvell is going to discuss the newly added players a little bit more, maybe just some snippets of what's coming up with spring ball, some of his comments. We'll see how that goes. But anyway, thank you very much. Like, subscribe, and share this podcast. I will see you again on Wednesday.